The old photograph lay nestled amongst a scattering of newer digital prints, a silent testament to a moment frozen in time. It depicted a group of friends, their faces beaming with genuine joy, captured against a vibrant, sun-drenched backdrop. At first glance, it was nothing more than a beautiful memento, an ordinary snapshot of shared camaraderie brimming with the kind of nostalgic warmth that makes one's heart ache just a little. Yet, beneath its seemingly placid surface, a profound secret lay dormant, concealed within a detail so subtle, so almost imperceptible, that it had eluded observation for months, perhaps even years. It was a whisper in the visual noise, a tiny ripple in a vast ocean of smiles and laughter, waiting patiently for the right pair of eyes to discern its true significance. This image, innocent as it appeared, held the key to an untold story, a silent narrative woven into the fabric of their collective past, destined to reshape their understanding of everything they thought they knew. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy uncovering hidden truths. Meet Alex, the quiet observer in the periphery of life's grand stage, a man whose mind often lingered on the faint echoes of yesterday, dissecting moments with an almost academic precision. He possessed a deeply nostalgic soul, one that found comfort in the worn edges of old memories and a keen, almost obsessive eye for detail. This combination often led him down rabbit holes of thought, turning over stones others would simply walk past, convinced there was always something more to uncover beneath the surface. He was the kind of person who noticed the way light fell on a forgotten object, the subtle shift in a friend's tone, or the unspoken sentiment behind a casual gesture. His recent reunion with his childhood friends had been a whirlwind of emotion, a vibrant tapestry of shared history and renewed connections. And now, in the quiet aftermath, his mind was dutifully, perhaps even compulsively, replaying every scene, every conversation, every fleeting expression. Alex was prone to overthinking, a trait that could sometimes be a burden, but also, as he was about to discover, an invaluable asset. He often mused that life's most profound revelations weren't shouted from the rooftops but whispered in the margins, and it was in those margins he often found himself searching. The reunion itself had been a glorious explosion of warmth and familiarity, a much-anticipated gathering after far too many years had slipped through their fingers like fine sand. They had converged at their old haunt, a quaint lakeside cabin that had once served as the unofficial headquarters for their youthful adventures. The air had been thick with the joyous clamor of overlapping voices, each punctuated by bursts of genuine laughter that echoed the carefree days of their youth. Stories were retold, embellished, with the wisdom and humor of hindsight sparking fresh waves of mirth. They reminisced about awkward teenage dances, disastrous camping trips, and the countless inside jokes that still held their potent magic despite the passage of time. There was an undeniable comfort in being surrounded by faces that had witnessed his awkward phases, celebrated his small triumphs, and offered solace during his youthful heartbreaks. The years melted away, replaced by the effortless banter and deep-seated understanding that only decades of shared history can forge. It felt as if no time had passed at all, yet every gray hair and subtle line etched around their eyes spoke volumes of the lives they had lived apart. The atmosphere was one of pure, unadulterated contentment, a collective sigh of relief that some bonds truly are unbreakable. They ate, they drank, they danced, and for a precious few days they were simply them again, unbound by the pressures and responsibilities of their adult lives. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender, someone suggested taking a new group photo. It was a spontaneous idea, born from the desire to capture the essence of their renewed bond, a tangible marker of this precious moment. They gathered together on the cabin's porch, a familiar tangle of limbs and smiles. There was a playful jostling for positions, a friendly debate over who would stand where, each person eager to be close to a particular friend. Alex found himself standing between Mark and Emily, their arms casually slung around each other's shoulders. The camera, a modern smartphone, was propped on a makeshift stand set on a timer. A countdown began, a series of beeps that built a gentle anticipation. Everyone straightened up, adjusted their smiles, and fixed their gaze on the lens, eager to create a perfect memory. The air crackled with a light-hearted energy, a collective sense of happiness that permeated the entire scene. A final beep, a flash, and the moment was immortalized. It was a casual, joyful snapshot, destined for social media feeds and nostalgic scrapbooks, a seemingly innocuous record of a perfect day. In the immediate aftermath, as they crowded around the small screen to review the photo, there was a chorus of approval. Everyone looked happy, vibrant, and utterly content. The picture perfectly encapsulated the spirit of their reunion, a group of friends connected by an unbreakable thread of shared history, basking in the glow of their rediscovered camaraderie. Alex felt a profound sense of peace settle over him, a quiet satisfaction that life, despite its many twists and turns, had brought them all back together. He saved the image to his phone, along with dozens of others from the weekend, convinced that it was a flawless representation of their enduring friendship. There was no hint of discord, no shadow of a secret, no inkling that this particular photograph, more than any other, contained a silent, powerful narrative waiting to be unraveled. Everything, he believed with unwavering certainty, was exactly as it seemed. The world was simple, their bonds were clear, and the future, though unknown, felt bright and uncomplicated. He tucked the memory and the photo away, assuming it was just another beautiful addition to his mental album of cherished moments, utterly unaware of the subtle, unsettling truth it held captive. Days later, the crisp digital image of their reunion photo flickered to life on Alex's tablet screen, a vibrant capture of renewed camaraderie and shared smiles. He was sprawled on his old, comfortable armchair, a mug of half-cold tea beside him, indulging in the quiet ritual of post-event reflection. The warmth of the gathering still lingered in his mind, a pleasant hum beneath the surface of his everyday thoughts. He scrolled through a dozen other snapshots from that evening. Silly selfies, candid shots of friends deep in conversation, a blurry photo of someone attempting a dance move from their teenage years. Each image brought a fresh wave of nostalgia, a bittersweet reminder of how much time had passed, yet how little had truly changed between them. He paused on the group photo, the one taken just before everyone began to disperse, promising to meet again soon. It was a perfect encapsulation of their reunion, all 7 of them clustered together, arms around shoulders, a spectrum of genuine grins beaming at the lens. Alex remembered the moment vividly, the playful jostling for position, the collective countdown, the flash that momentarily blinded them. He had felt a profound sense of completeness then, a deep satisfaction that life, despite its twists and turns, had brought them all back to this familiar, comforting space. As his gaze drifted across the smiling faces, a subtle glitch in the tapestry of his perfect memory caught his attention. His eyes, almost unconsciously, fixated on Sarah. She stood towards the left of the frame, her usually effervescent smile a little softer, a touch more enigmatic than the others. Initially, Alex dismissed it as a trick of the light, a fleeting expression caught mid-blink, but something about it tugged at him, a tiny thread threatening to unravel the neat fabric of his perception. He zoomed in, his brow furrowing slightly. It wasn't her smile that was peculiar, not exactly, it was her eyes. While everyone else's gaze, including Alex's own, was directed squarely at the camera, Sarah's were subtly, almost imperceptibly angled. They weren't looking straight ahead, they were looking within the frame. His finger instinctively traced the line her eyes seemed to follow, a silent, invisible vector across the digital pixels. And then he saw it. Her gaze wasn't aimed at the camera, but rather it was fixed on Ben, who stood 2 people away from her, laughing heartily at something someone else had just said. Ben, with his characteristic easygoing charm, was oblivious, his head tilted back in genuine mirth. Sarah's eyes, however, held a different quality. It wasn't a casual glance, not a momentary distraction. There was a quiet intensity there, a depth that felt out of place amidst the general revelry. It was as if, even as the camera flashed, her attention had been completely absorbed by him, her world momentarily shrinking to encompass only Ben's radiant presence. Alex leaned back, a sudden, unsettling chill replacing the pleasant warmth of nostalgia. He tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it away. Maybe she was caught off guard looking at Ben for a cue, a shared joke, a fleeting moment of connection that meant nothing more than friendly banter. Perhaps the angle of the shot, the way the light fell, created an optical illusion, making her eyes seem to stray when they were in fact perfectly aligned with the lens. He scrolled away, then scrolled back, his finger hovering over the image. Each time he returned to it, the details seemed to become clearer, more pronounced, refusing to be ignored. The image nagged at him. It felt deliberate, not accidental. There was a quiet intensity in Sarah's gaze, a subtle yearning that resonated with an unspoken emotion. Alex wasn't one to overthink minor details, not usually, but this felt different. It was a whisper in a shout, a silent note in a cacophony of joy. The innocent group photo, once a simple memento of friendship, now held a new, intriguing mystery for him. His initial dismissal slowly gave way to a burgeoning sense of unease, then to a prickling, undeniable curiosity. What was Sarah truly looking at in that fleeting moment, and more importantly, why? The questions began to swirl in his mind, transforming the familiar faces of his friends into characters in an unfolding silent drama. He found himself replaying snippets of the reunion in his head, trying to recall any interaction, any glance, any subtle shift in body language between Sarah and Ben that he might have missed. But the evening had been a blur of joyful noise and shared memories, too chaotic for such quiet observations. The photo, however, provided an unblinking, unwavering record, and in that record something profound seemed to be hidden, just beneath the surface of a perfectly ordinary smile. His mind, once content with the simple joy of the reunion, now felt a distinct pull towards uncovering the truth behind that unsettling, almost haunting gaze. The photo had stopped being just a memory. It had become a puzzle. The peculiar angle of Sarah's gaze in the photograph continued to haunt Alex, a subtle yet insistent whisper at the back of his mind. He found himself replaying snippets of their past, not just the recent reunion, but reaching further back into the hazy archives of their shared childhood and tumultuous adolescence. He tried to reconstruct scenarios, searching for a foundation, any plausible explanation for that almost imperceptible tilt of her head, the focused intensity in her eyes that bypassed the camera entirely and landed squarely on Ben. His mind became a frantic search engine, sifting through decades of memories, each one a fragile, yellowed photograph in itself, waiting to be examined under a magnifying glass. He closed his eyes, urging his memory to yield more. He thought of school dances where they all awkwardly congregated, of study groups where laughter often overshadowed textbooks, of countless Friday nights spent at the local diner, spilling secrets over greasy fries. Was there a moment, a look, a gesture between Sarah and Ben that he, engrossed in his own youthful dramas or simply caught up in the boisterous energy of the group, had completely missed? He mentally scrolled through birthday parties, summer barbecues, and even the solemnity of graduation day. He remembered Sarah's infectious laugh, Ben's quiet thoughtfulness, their individual quirks, and how they blended into the vibrant tapestry of their friendship group. But did they ever intertwine in a way that was unique to just the two of them? A thread separate from the main weave? Subtle, fragmented images began to surface, like old film footage flickering on a projector screen. He recalled a particularly cold winter evening during their senior year when Sarah had stumbled on an icy patch outside the library. Ben, always quick to react, had been the first to steady her, his hand lingering on her arm for a beat longer than strictly necessary. Alex at the time had dismissed it as simple chivalry, a friend helping a friend. Then there was the infamous incident of Mrs. Peterson's stolen garden gnome, a prank they had all planned. But it was Sarah and Ben who had been caught hiding behind the azaleas, giggling conspiratorially, their shoulders almost touching. He remembered an inside joke they shared, a nonsensical phrase that would occasionally escape their lips, eliciting a private smile between them, a moment of connection that excluded the rest. There was also a time when Sarah had been particularly upset about a family issue, and Alex vaguely recalled Ben being the one to sit with her for hours, away from the group, offering silent comfort while the others were oblivious, too busy with their own concerns. These were not grand declarations or overt displays of affection, but rather fleeting, almost imperceptible instances easily overlooked in the grander narrative of their collective youth. He had seen them, of course, but hadn't seen them. He hadn't processed their significance, hadn't connected the dots. The true obstacle, Alex realized with a pang of insight, wasn't a person or a deliberate act of concealment. It was the collective obliviousness of their youth, the self-centeredness that often accompanies growing up, and the relentless blurring passage of time. They had all been so deeply immersed in their own burgeoning lives, their individual aspirations, their first crushes, their anxieties about the future, that the subtle threads connecting others often went unnoticed. Each friend was a universe unto themselves, orbiting within a larger galaxy, but rarely looking closely enough at the intricate dance of the other planets. Time, too, had played its part, eroding the sharp edges of memory, softening details, and making it easier to reinterpret or forget what might have once been obvious. The sheer weight of years had buried these potential truths under layers of new experiences, new relationships, and new realities. They had all been present, yet simultaneously absent from the unwritten stories unfolding right beside them. The more Alex sifted through these vague recollections, the more his initial unease transformed into a growing suspicion, a quiet certainty that he was onto something profoundly significant. It wasn't just a trick of the light or a momentary distraction. Sarah's gaze in that photograph wasn't accidental. It was a window, a portal to a hidden layer of their shared history. He began to believe there might have been something deeper, a connection between Sarah and Ben that transcended mere friendship, a secret garden they tended together, unseen by the rest of the world. Perhaps it was a quiet understanding, an unspoken affection, or even a longing that had never found its voice. The innocent group photo, once a symbol of their enduring bond, now felt like an archaeological site, hinting at buried treasures and untold stories. Alex felt an almost magnetic pull towards uncovering whatever lay beneath the surface, an imperative to understand the silent language conveyed by Sarah's eyes. The picture, seemingly so simple, had become an enigma, and he, the accidental detective, couldn't shake the feeling that a vital piece of their collective past, a piece that illuminated the true emotional landscape of their youth, was waiting to be discovered. His mind raced, already formulating how he might begin to gently peel back these layers of time and friendly oblivion. Alex knew direct confrontation was not the way. The delicate nature of what he suspected, the sheer longevity of the secret if it existed, demanded a more subtle approach, a gentle prodding rather than a forceful interrogation. He began by orchestrating casual catch-ups with various friends from their old circle, always ensuring the conversations veered naturally towards reminiscences of their shared youth. He'd casually bring up old parties, school trips, or even mundane afternoons spent at the local park, carefully weaving in questions about Sarah and Ben. "Remember that time Sarah fell off her bike?" He might begin, waiting for the laughter and shared memories to flow before adding, almost as an afterthought, "Ben was always so quick to help her, wasn't he? Or was it Mark?" He tried to keep his tone light, his demeanor nonchalant, hoping to glean insights without raising suspicion. His first target was Chloe, known for her sharp memory and keen observations, even if she sometimes embellished details for dramatic effect. Over coffee, Alex steered the conversation towards their senior year, a period he felt might hold significant clues. Chloe recalled Sarah and Ben being inseparable for a while, particularly during a difficult time for Sarah. "They were like two peas in a pod," Chloe mused, stirring her latte. "Always whispering, always sharing private jokes. I just assumed they were best friends, like siblings almost." But then she quickly added, "Though, now that I think about it, Ben definitely seemed to look at her differently sometimes, like he was trying to figure out a complex equation or something profound. But Sarah? She was always so guarded." Chloe's account painted a picture of closeness, but also one of ambiguity, leaving Alex with more questions than answers. She remembered a certain intensity, but not a romance, merely an unusual bond that stood out from the others. Next, Alex spoke to Tom, whose memory was notoriously hazy, often requiring prodding to recall even major events. Tom remembered Sarah and Ben primarily through the lens of their group activities. They were always just part of the furniture, weren't they? Tom chuckled during their video call, his voice echoing slightly. "Good friends, definitely, but everyone was good friends with everyone back then. I don't recall anything specific, no big drama or anything, just the usual teenage stuff." He vaguely remembered a phase where Sarah and Ben seemed to hang out more, but dismissed it as just a phase, probably because they had a class together or something. Tom's perspective, while honest, was frustratingly devoid of the depth Alex was searching for. It underscored how easily significant nuances could be missed when viewed from a distance or through a fog of self-preoccupation. His memories were broad strokes, lacking the fine details Alex desperately needed. The conversations continued, each friend offering a piece of the puzzle, yet none providing the definitive corner piece Alex desperately sought. Liam, ever the pragmatist, saw their relationship as purely platonic, built on shared intellectual interests rather than emotional intimacy. "They talked about books and art a lot," Liam explained, ever concise. "Deep conversation, sure, but that was just them. They were the thinkers of the group." Emma, on the other hand, recalled a brief period of intense jealousy she felt towards Sarah, believing Ben had a crush on Sarah in middle school. "He used to draw little caricatures of her in his notebook," Emma confessed, a blush creeping up her neck. "I thought he liked her, but then nothing ever came of it, so I guess I was wrong." Each recollection was subjective, colored by the individual's own experiences, their own position within the group's social ecosystem, and their personal biases. Their memories were unreliable narrators, weaving tales influenced by their own roles and perceptions rather than offering an objective, overarching truth. The collective memory was a kaleidoscope, shifting and distorting with each turn. Alex realized that the truth wasn't a singular, easily accessible fact, but a tapestry woven from countless threads, some strong, some frayed, some completely missing. The friends were not lying, but their perspectives were inherently limited. They had seen what they were prepared to see, what fit into their own understanding of the group dynamic. No one had possessed the panoramic view, the outsider's detachment, or perhaps the sheer emotional investment to notice the subtle, almost imperceptible currents flowing beneath the surface. He felt a growing sense of isolation in his pursuit. It was as if he was the only one peering through a microscope, while everyone else was content with the naked eye view. The puzzle, instead of becoming clearer, was deepening, its complexities multiplying with each new, fragmented piece of information. The lack of a conclusive answer from his friends only reinforced his conviction that if something had indeed transpired between Sarah and Ben, it was profoundly personal, perhaps even deliberately concealed, a secret held tightly between them, or perhaps even an unspoken understanding that neither had ever fully articulated. The stakes in Alex's mind were escalating. What had begun as a fleeting curiosity, a mild intellectual exercise prompted by an unusual gaze in a photograph, had transformed into something far more significant. The photo was no longer just a nostalgic snapshot. It was a doorway, a silent, unblinking witness to a potentially significant untold story that had shaped their past in ways none of them had ever fully comprehended. He felt a growing responsibility, an almost moral imperative, to understand what he had seen. It was as if he had stumbled upon an ancient ruin, a buried city beneath the familiar landscape of their youth, and now he couldn't turn away. The lives they had built, the relationships they now maintained, all seemed to rest on a foundation that might contain an unacknowledged truth. This wasn't about gossip or exposing secrets for the sake of it. It was about honoring a piece of their collective history, about understanding the full emotional landscape of their shared past. The weight of this potential secret, the quiet dignity of it, pressed upon him. He knew he couldn't let it remain buried. The photo had called to him, and he had to answer. He had to delve deeper, beyond the subjective recollections of their friends, into something more tangible, something that might offer undeniable proof, or, at the very least, a clearer path towards the truth. His next step, he knew, would have to be less conversational and more archaeological. The past held its secrets, but often left breadcrumbs for those persistent enough to find them. He felt a surge of resolve, a quiet determination to unearth whatever lay hidden, to finally bring light to the shadows of their youth. The image of Sarah's eyes, fixed on Ben, remained burned into his mind, a silent challenge he was now fully prepared to meet. Alex's mind, now a relentless engine of inquiry, couldn't rest on vague recollections and the subjective memories of his friends. He needed more. The subtle hints, the fleeting glances, the half-remembered moments of quiet solace between Sarah and Ben were not enough to satisfy the gnawing curiosity that had taken root deep within him. He needed tangible proof, something solid that could withstand the erosion of time and the collective amnesia of their group. His investigation, initially confined to his own mental archives and casual conversations, now expanded into a deeper, more rigorous research, a veritable archaeological dig through the relics of their shared past. He began with the most obvious repositories of high school history, old yearbooks, dusty and heavy. He pulled out the worn volumes from his attic, their pages brittle with age, the scent of forgotten paper and teenage dreams filling his workspace. Each yearbook was a time capsule, a mosaic of faces, inside jokes, and aspirations. He meticulously flipped through them, not just looking for Sarah or Ben, but for any subtle interaction between them, any shared space in a photo that wasn't a large group shot, any cryptic message. He wasn't looking for grand declarations, but rather the quiet whispers that might have gone unnoticed. And slowly, painstakingly, the first fragments began to emerge. A dedication in Sarah's junior year yearbook, tucked away on a less trafficked page, read simply, "To be, for always understanding. You get it. X." It wasn't a full name, but the initial, coupled with the intimate tone, sent a jolt through Alex. Ben's yearbook, in turn, had a small, almost hidden drawing on his signature page, a tiny, intricately sketched star constellation that Alex suddenly recognized as the one Sarah had always claimed was theirs, a secret code for a shared memory about a meteor shower they'd all watched one summer night, though Ben and Sarah had stayed up hours longer than the rest of them. These were not smoking guns, but they were certainly intriguing breadcrumbs. His digital excavation proved even more revealing, albeit more time-consuming. He delved into the nascent days of social media, scrolling through ancient Facebook posts and forgotten MySpace profiles. The internet, in its infancy, had been a less curated, more spontaneous space. He found old photo albums from school trips and parties. There, buried deep in a collection of blurry, low-resolution images, were several snapshots of Sarah and Ben. They weren't always side by side, but often in the background of other photos, caught in candid moments. A picture from a school dance showed them laughing together slightly apart from the main group, their heads tilted in a way that suggested a private conversation. Another from a casual beach trip captured them walking along the shore, a comfortable distance between them, yet their gazes were undeniably locked onto each other, a shared secret smile playing on their lips. He even managed to unearth remnants of old group chat messages long since dormant, where he found a thread initiated by Sarah, asking only Ben if he remembered our spot. Ben's reply was a simple emoji of a tree and a smiling face. The spot was a secluded clearing in the woods near their old neighborhood, a place the main group had visited only once or twice, but which Alex now recalled Sarah and Ben often disappearing to, always returning with a quiet contentment. A pattern, faint at first, then increasingly undeniable, began to solidify. These weren't random occurrences. They weren't fleeting coincidences. There was a consistent thread of private moments, shared glances, and coded communications that wove through their adolescence entirely separate from the boisterous, often chaotic tapestry of their larger friend group. Sarah and Ben had cultivated a parallel universe, a quiet corner of their lives where they seemed to exist in a unique synchronicity. It was a world built on inside jokes, unspoken understandings, and a comfort that transcended the casual banter of their peers. Alex saw how they had seamlessly blended into the larger group, never drawing undue attention, always maintaining the facade of ordinary friendship, yet subtly nurturing something deeper beneath the surface. He felt a profound sense of revelation, as if he were finally seeing the true colors of a painting that had always appeared monochrome. This wasn't just an intellectual exercise anymore, it had become an intensely emotional journey for Alex. He felt a deep, almost empathetic connection to the potential secret, to the raw, unexpressed emotions it might represent. He imagined Sarah and Ben navigating the complexities of their burgeoning feelings in the shadow of their friendships, the unspoken words, the stolen moments. He felt the weight of their potential longing, their quiet understanding, and the silent sacrifices they might have made to preserve their hidden connection. It wasn't just about solving a mystery, it was about honoring a piece of their collective history that had been overlooked, a silent narrative that deserved to be heard. He felt a pang of regret for his own youthful obliviousness, for the times he might have been present but truly absent, missing the profound emotional landscape unfolding right beside him. The true antagonist in this unfolding drama wasn't a person or a malicious act, but the insidious power of silence itself. It was the silence of unasked questions, the silence of unspoken feelings, the silence of a group too caught up in its own orbit to truly see the intricate dance of two souls within it. This silence had allowed a significant truth to remain buried for years, shaping their past in ways they hadn't even recognized. It had become a formidable barrier, a wall of forgotten history that Alex now felt an urgent, almost desperate need to dismantle. The photograph, with Sarah's telling gaze, was no longer just a curious anomaly. It was a silent scream from the past, demanding to be heard. Alex knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his bones, that he could not let this story remain untold. The weight of this potential secret, the depth of the emotions it implied, compelled him forward. He had to break the silence. The scattered observations that Alex had meticulously collected, the faint echoes from old yearbooks, the almost imperceptible nuances of ancient social media comments, and especially the poignant memory of Ben offering silent comfort to Sarah during a family crisis. All these fragments now coalesced into a compelling, undeniable theory. It wasn't merely a suspicion anymore, it was a solidified understanding, a coherent narrative that painted a vivid picture of what Sarah's gaze in that reunion photograph truly signified. Her eyes, angled away from the lens and towards Ben, were not an accident of timing or a momentary lapse in attention. They were a testament, a silent confession of a profound emotional bond, perhaps unrequited, perhaps mutually acknowledged but never fully expressed, or perhaps a long-forgotten connection that had always existed just beneath the surface of their boisterous group dynamic. The intensity of this realization was almost physical, a sudden rush of clarity that made the past snap into sharp, vivid focus. This wasn't merely a casual crush or a fleeting moment of infatuation. This felt like a foundational element of their shared youth, a secret that had subtly colored countless interactions and perceptions for years, yet had remained almost entirely invisible to everyone but the two people involved. The sheer weight of this unspoken history settled upon Alex, a heavy and undeniable presence in his thoughts. With the theory now firmly established in his mind, a new, more uncomfortable dilemma emerged, casting a long shadow over his newfound understanding. What, precisely, was he supposed to do with this knowledge? This wasn't a trivial secret, a piece of harmless gossip to be shared over coffee. This was a deeply personal, potentially vulnerable truth, one that had been quietly preserved by time and circumstance for decades. He felt a profound sense of responsibility, almost a reluctant guardianship of this newly discovered facet of their shared history. Should he simply let it lie, respecting the privacy that had endured for so long, allowing the past to remain undisturbed? Or did the truth, once glimpsed and understood, demand to be brought into the light, even if only to the individuals directly involved? The thought of confronting Sarah or even Ben with his observations filled him with a potent mixture of apprehension and ethical unease. What if his revelation caused pain? What if it unearthed old wounds that had painstakingly healed or disrupted the carefully constructed lives they had all built since those formative, often tumultuous years? Sarah was now happily married, seemingly content. Ben was engaged, planning his future. To potentially introduce such a disruptive element, to stir the waters of a long-settled past, felt dangerous, almost reckless. He imagined the ripple effect, the potential for awkwardness, regret, resentment, or even a profound sense of loss for what might have been. Yet the alternative, remaining entirely silent, felt like a betrayal of the truth he had so painstakingly uncovered, a denial of a significant and poignant part of their collective story. The innocent group picture, once a simple memory, had transformed into a moral compass pointing him towards a difficult and emotionally charged choice. The internal debate raged within Alex for several days, occupying every spare moment of his thoughts, coloring his perceptions of the world around him. He meticulously weighed the pros and cons, carefully considering the potential harm against the potential for understanding, for closure, for a more complete and honest appreciation of their past. Ultimately, the imperative to seek the truth, to truly comprehend the full emotional landscape of their youth, outweighed his reservations. The weight of the unspoken history, the silent narrative captured so eloquently in Sarah's eyes, felt too heavy, too significant to simply ignore or dismiss. It wasn't about gossip or exposing secrets for the sake of drama. It was about understanding the intricate web of human connection that had always existed within their group. He began to believe that some truths, however uncomfortable or unsettling, were necessary for a complete understanding, for truly appreciating the rich and complex tapestry of their shared past. Perhaps, he reasoned, revealing it gently and with empathy might even bring a form of liberation, a chance for Sarah and Ben to acknowledge something they had long suppressed, forgotten, or simply never had the courage to address. He decided to act, but with extreme caution and sensitivity, understanding the profound delicacy of the situation. This wasn't a mission to cause harm, but to bridge a gap in their collective memory, to give voice to what had been silent for far too long. With the difficult decision made, Alex began to meticulously plan his approach. He knew instinctively that a direct, blunt confrontation would be disastrous, likely leading to denial, defensiveness, and potentially fracturing their friendships. He needed subtlety, empathy, and a carefully chosen moment. He considered speaking to Ben first, then Sarah, or vice versa, but decided that Sarah, being the one whose gaze had sparked this entire investigation, should be his initial point of contact. He thought about a group setting, but quickly dismissed it. This was far too personal, far too intimate a revelation for the public arena of their friends. A casual, one-on-one conversation conducted in a private and comfortable setting seemed most appropriate. He would need to be incredibly gentle to present his observations not as accusations or definitive statements, but as genuine questions, as a shared quest for understanding. He envisioned showing the photo, not as irrefutable proof of a secret affair, but as a starting point for a deeper, more meaningful conversation. He would emphasize his own curiosity, his own journey of discovery, rather than placing any blame or making any definitive declarations about their past. He thought about where they could meet: a quiet cafe they used to frequent, a secluded park bench, or perhaps even a private corner of his own home, a place where they could speak openly without interruption or the threat of prying ears. He rehearsed potential opening lines in his head, trying to anticipate her reactions, preparing himself for denial, surprise, embarrassment, or even anger. The delicate nature of the situation demanded nothing less than absolute thoughtfulness and careful consideration. As Alex moved from contemplation to the detailed planning of his approach, a palpable tension began to build within him, tightening its grip with each passing hour. The seemingly innocent group photo had truly transformed into a ticking emotional bomb, and he was the one holding it, preparing to carefully diffuse it. Every interaction he had with Sarah or Ben, even the most superficial exchanges, now felt loaded with unspoken meaning. He found himself scrutinizing their expressions, their gestures, their casual conversations, searching for any telltale signs, any echo of the past he was about to unearth. The anticipation was a constant low hum beneath the surface of his daily life, a persistent undercurrent to his thoughts and actions. He imagined the precise moment of revelation, the look on Sarah's face as she truly saw what he had seen, the potential shift in her demeanor, the immense weight of a long-held secret finally acknowledged, perhaps even spoken aloud. He wondered if this conversation would ultimately be a cathartic release, a moment of profound understanding, or a painful intrusion into a carefully constructed present. The stakes felt incredibly high, not just for Sarah and Ben, but for the integrity of their entire friendship group, for the shared history they all thought they knew. He was about to pull at a thread that ran deep through the very fabric of their collective past, and he had absolutely no idea what unraveling it might truly entail. The air around him seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities, and Alex braced himself for the profound conversation that lay ahead, a conversation that held the power to redefine their past, reshape their present, and perhaps even alter the course of their future relationships. With a deep, fortifying breath, Alex finally initiated the carefully planned conversation. He had chosen their old haunt, a quiet, unassuming coffee shop tucked away on a side street, a place where memories lingered in the scent of roasted beans and the murmur of hushed conversations. Sarah arrived, a faint smile on her lips, unaware of the profound, emotional landscape Alex was about to unveil. He offered her a warm, reassuring glance, trying to project a sense of calm he didn't entirely feel. The small, unassuming table between them suddenly felt like a chasm laden with unspoken history. He ordered their usual drinks, a familiar ritual that served as a fragile bridge over the nervous silence. The air was thick with a subtle tension, a premonition of change that only Alex seemed to perceive, his heart thrumming a restless rhythm against his ribs. After a few minutes of innocuous small talk about work, about mutual friends, Alex gently steered the conversation towards the reunion. He spoke of the joy of seeing everyone, the warmth of shared laughter, the comforting embrace of nostalgia. Then, with a practiced ease, he retrieved his phone, navigating to the infamous group photo. He handed it to Sarah, observing her face as her eyes scanned the familiar image. "It was such a great night, wasn't it?" he began, his voice soft, almost conversational. "Everyone looked so happy, so genuinely in the moment." He paused, letting her absorb the image, letting the initial veneer of pleasant memory settle. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he zoomed in slightly, subtly guiding her gaze towards her own figure in the frame, and then ever so slightly towards Ben. "I was looking through these the other day," he continued, maintaining a light tone, "and I noticed something really interesting about this one." He pointed, his finger hovering just above her eyes. "Your gaze, Sarah. It's not quite on the camera, is it? It's a little off, almost like you were looking at something or someone else." He met her eyes, a question, not an accusation, in his own. "I just wondered what you were thinking in that exact moment." Sarah's smile faltered, replaced by a subtle shift in her expression. A flicker of surprise, then a faint blush crept up her neck, painting her cheeks with a delicate rose hue. Her eyes, which had been casually sweeping the photo, now locked onto her own image, then darted almost imperceptibly towards Ben's. She cleared her throat, a small, nervous sound. "Oh, really, I hadn't noticed," she said, her voice a little too quick, a little too light. She tried to laugh it off, a brittle, strained sound. "Probably just distracted, you know? Someone probably cracked a joke right as the picture was taken, or maybe I was just trying to blink." Her gaze, however, refused to meet Alex's directly, instead fixating on the coffee swirling gently in her cup. Her fingers toyed with the rim, a barely perceptible tremor betraying her feigned nonchalance. The denial was automatic, a reflex born of years of practice concealment, but it lacked conviction, a fragile shield against the truth Alex had so gently yet effectively placed before her. The silence that followed stretched, taut and heavy, punctuated only by the distant clatter of mugs and the low hum of the coffee machine. Alex didn't press, didn't argue. He simply waited, his gaze unwavering, compassionate. He saw the struggle in her eyes, the internal battle between maintaining the facade and the overwhelming urge to unburden herself. The weight of the unspoken history, which he had only recently begun to comprehend, now seemed to press down on Sarah with an unbearable force. Her shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly, and she let out a slow, tremulous sigh, a sound laden with years of unspoken emotion. She took a deep, shuddering breath, as if preparing to dive into cold water, and finally her eyes, glistening with a nascent vulnerability, met Alex's. The fragile shield had shattered, revealing the raw, exposed truth beneath. "It wasn't a joke," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a fragile admission that broke the long-held silence. "I wasn't distracted. I was looking at Ben." The confession hung in the air, a delicate, almost sacred thing. Sarah's gaze drifted back to the photo, her finger tracing the outline of Ben's profile. "It started so subtly," she began, her voice gaining a little strength, though still tinged with a profound sadness. "Back in high school, during those long study sessions we used to have, everyone would be cramming for exams, but Ben, he always seemed to understand things differently. He'd explain concepts to me in a way no one else could, patiently, without judgment. There was this one night, a particularly brutal calculus test looming, and I was on the verge of tears. Everyone else had gone home, but Ben stayed. He just sat there, quietly, explaining everything until it clicked. And then when I finally understood, he just smiled, this gentle, knowing smile, and said, 'See, you've got this.' In that moment, something shifted for me. It wasn't just about calculus. It was about feeling truly seen, truly understood in a way I hadn't experienced before." Her voice grew softer, tinged with a bittersweet longing. That night, under the fluorescent lights of the deserted library, a connection formed, something quiet and profound that felt entirely ours. It wasn't grand. No dramatic confessions or stolen kisses. It was in the shared glances, the unspoken understanding, the way he always seemed to know when I needed a quiet word or a comforting presence. We had our own inside jokes, our own secret spots where we'd meet, just to talk, to escape the chaos of our teenage lives. There was a particular bench by the old oak tree behind the school, where we'd spend hours sharing dreams, fears, and the silly aspirations of youth. We promised each other we'd always have that no matter what, we'd be there for each other, a silent pact that transcended mere friendship. It was a love, Alex, a quiet, protective love that felt too precious, too vulnerable to expose to the world, especially to our boisterous group of friends who saw us only as Sarah and Ben, the sensible ones. A tear finally escaped, tracing a glistening path down her cheek. We never spoke about it openly, not really. It was always there, an undercurrent, a silent language between us. But life, as it often does, pulled us in different directions: college, careers, other relationships. The unspoken promise remained, a ghost of what could have been, a constant what if lingering at the edges of my thoughts. When we reunited all those years later and stood there for that photo, everything flooded back. The laughter, the camaraderie, it was wonderful. But when Ben stood next to me just for that fleeting second, I remembered every single shared glance, every quiet moment, every unspoken word. My eyes just instinctively went to him, a reflex of a heart that still, after all this time, holds a piece of him. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated longing for a path not taken, a love quietly set aside, a secret that has lived within me for decades. Alex sat in stunned silence, absorbing the raw honesty of her confession, the profound depth of a love that had blossomed and faded, yet never truly died. The weight of her revelation settled heavily between them, a testament to the intricate, often heartbreaking stories that lie hidden beneath the surface of ordinary lives. He could feel the echoes of regret, the quiet acceptance of missed opportunities, and the lingering tenderness that still clung to her words. The conversation had concluded, leaving behind an emotional residue that was both heavy and strangely illuminating. The air, once thick with unspoken history, now felt lighter, yet profoundly altered. Sarah had initially recoiled, a flush spreading across her cheeks, as Alex, with gentle precision, guided her gaze to that subtle, telling angle in the old photograph. Her denial was fleeting, a mere whisper against the undeniable truth captured in her own eyes. Then came the deluge, a story not of grand gestures, but of quiet, persistent affection, of shared vulnerabilities whispered under starlit skies, of a bond forged in mutual understanding that had simply never found the courage, or perhaps the right moment, to bloom into something overt. It wasn't a clandestine affair, but a secret love, a tender, unacknowledged connection that had lived, breathed, and ultimately faded within the silent chambers of their hearts. Ben, when Alex later spoke to him, had listened with a stoic silence that eventually broke into a wistful smile. He confirmed Sarah's narrative, adding his own layers of regret and unspoken longing. He spoke of timings that were always just off, of youthful fears, and the unspoken agreement to protect their friendship, and the wider group dynamic, from the messy complexities of their true feelings. The revelation wasn't a scandal, but a poignant echo of what might have been, a testament to the quiet sacrifices made in the name of perceived harmony. In the immediate aftermath, a profound quiet settled over Sarah and Ben, a shared space of reflection and gentle understanding. There were no dramatic confrontations, no explosive declarations, only a renewed, deeper respect for each other, and for Alex, who had so delicately unearthed their buried truth. They didn't rush to rekindle a lost romance. The past was the past, imbued with its own unique beauty and sorrow. Instead, they found a different kind of connection, one built on the honesty that had finally been spoken, a friendship now enriched by the full knowledge of its own intricate history. The awkwardness gradually subsided, replaced by a comfortable authenticity that had been missing for decades. For the wider group of friends, the shift was subtle but perceptible. Alex, having carefully navigated the initial conversations, chose to let the truth unfold naturally, allowing Sarah and Ben to share their story or not, as they saw fit. Over time, in fragments of hushed conversations and knowing glances, the essence of their unspoken bond began to permeate the collective consciousness. It wasn't a scandal that ripped through their circle, but a revelation that deepened their understanding of one another, adding layers of complexity and empathy to their shared narrative. Some friends expressed surprise, others a quiet recognition, a feeling that perhaps deep down they had always sensed an invisible thread connecting Sarah and Ben. The group dynamics didn't shatter. Instead, they matured, evolving into something more nuanced, more forgiving, and ultimately more real. The friendships, once seemingly uncomplicated, now held a bittersweet depth, acknowledging the hidden currents that had always flowed beneath the surface of their shared lives. It was a testament to the idea that every individual, even within the closest of circles, carries an entire universe of unspoken experiences and emotions. This journey, sparked by a single, almost imperceptible detail in a faded photograph, became a powerful testament to the hidden depths of human connection. It underscored the profound reality that the most significant stories often remain unwritten, existing only in the quiet spaces between glances, in the subtle shifts of expression, in the unspoken words that shape lives as profoundly as any grand declaration. Alex's persistent observation had not merely uncovered a secret, it had unveiled a universal truth about the human condition itself, that we are all intricate tapestries woven with visible threads of shared experience and invisible strands of private emotion, longing, and sacrifice. The story concluded not with a dramatic resolution, but with a quiet acceptance, a bittersweet understanding of life's complexities, and the beautiful, often painful, dance between what is shown and what remains concealed. The power of observation, Alex realized, was not just about seeing details, but about understanding the echoes they left behind, the profound impact of even the smallest gestures. A single subtle detail in an ordinary photo had indeed unlocked a lifetime of unspoken emotion and history, reminding them all that every snapshot, every fleeting moment holds within it an entire universe of potential narratives, waiting patiently for a curious eye to bring them into the light. It was a reminder to look closer, to listen more intently, and to always remember that the most extraordinary stories are often hidden in the most ordinary of places. If this story resonated with you, if it sparked a flicker of curiosity about the hidden narratives lurking in your own memories or photographs, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tales that reveal the extraordinary in the ordinary. What hidden stories do you think photos might hold? Have you ever noticed a subtle detail that changed your entire perception of a moment or a relationship? Share your thoughts and your own experiences in the comments below, and check out our next video for another captivating mystery. Your insights help us uncover the rich tapestry of human experience, one hidden truth at a time.